this has really become a global sort of issue that everyone is talking about, including here in Canada. What are you seeing on that front?
Very much so. In fact, as you mentioned, here in Canada today, in Toronto, there were protests as well. Large crowds gathered on the street, blocking traffic as well. People protesting racism, both against the African Canadian community, the African American community in the United States, but also anti-Indigenous racism.
Hey everybody, it's Mack. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a time out because I want to discuss something that's really important. And I want to recognize that I am not um, dismissing anybody or anything like that, but I think it's time to understand some law enforcement culture. You can't change police until you can protect the individuals within that force that come forward. Let me explain what I mean. There is systemic racism. There's no doubt about it. There is problems within. There are people that get promoted based on inappropriate um, qualifications, or they've done something, or they're holding something over somebody else that gets them promoted. Or if you, one of the best things I can learn in corrections, one of the best examples is that if you are a really good negotiator with your union, and you are very good about negotiating contracts, you would find that management would suddenly offer you this huge promotion to elevate your position, so you would be out of the union so that they would have the advantage. The problem is in any type of law enforcement, there's a culture, and it's a blue culture. It's about um, you turn a blind eye to certain things. So, and here's why. Because when you, let's say, for example, the Toronto police were trying to stop the driver in the van that was driving down Yonge Street running people over. Now, as an officer, I'm going to confront that person, and we all agree that it has to be stopped, and that's a police function. However, all those people that I work with, the other frontline officers, my life depends on them too, just like their life depends on me and my reaction. So this is a problem that happens. So when you have good officers, and let's be honest, there are some good officers with have the intent of helping people no matter what your race is or color is. There's absolutely those out there. So those ones that are acting in a racist mannerism or that need to be called out don't get called out by their fellow officers because that officer has no protection. So that officer, when he has no protection, recognizes that there's this blue line that you just don't cross. And then until you can change that culture within the police force and law enforcement in general, you're going to have systemic racism happen across the world because nobody can be safe in confronting that. So that's why those good officers stay silent because they know my life or their life depend on their coworkers. And all of a sudden you become known as a snitch and a rat and all the other stuff that everybody claims, is not good. And then you're in trouble on your job and nobody comes to help you. And that is the culture of law enforcement. And that is the biggest problem that you're having when it comes to racism or inappropriate actions. Or now you've got those same officers with this mentality that are in management that are doing this exact same thing because they all come from that bred culture of protection of each other, no matter what the case is, because my life will depend on that other person. So there is a change coming. There's no question about it because I think Black Lives Matter is an amazing movement. I think our Indigenous communities have definitely been faced systemic racism. No, and I'm not saying just by police and law enforcement. I think in overall, I think we see systemic racism in Canada and around the world that it just doesn't get called out very often. So I think it's really important until you can change that one thing within any law enforcement where that officer who needs to speak up can speak up in a safe way that he's protected, then you're going to see some changes around the police culture and law enforcement in general. Because that thin blue line could be life or death for you. And unfortunately, if you speak out against management or your captain or whoever who's done something as well, you get harassed the crap out of you. You get written up for BS. You get harassed on the job. You get harassed outside of work until you quit. And that is part of the culture that this blue line has. And you need to understand that. Does it need to change and funding needs to be distributed differently and training probably should change? Absolutely, there's no question about it. But until you fix the problem where officers are protected from within, you're not going to get what you need. You're not going to get those officers speaking up against racism or calling out another officer when it's inappropriate because their lives are on the line. And not only their lives are on the line, their livelihood is on the line. They've lost their income. And let's just say they're a single household income. You have all these things forcing these people into this position of non-reaction. And when you talk about when your life may depend on that person that just did something racist or whatever, that's a pretty hard choice to make because you know that a week down the road or whatever, my life, stay survive out of whatever incident I'm facing may depend on that person. And will that person react the way they need to in order to help? And the history behind law enforcement in general is no, they won't. And then it grows within the law enforcement and everybody talks about it and then the truth doesn't come out and that person is ostracized and then their life is in danger. How you can protect those officers from speaking out and doing what they need to do, the general culture is they won't. When you have management that supports this behavior, and let's be realistic, I know that this happens, and I've also heard that this is happening, that management are protecting those individuals that are doing that, it's another problem. So let's figure out how do you protect the officers for speaking up. Then you'll see some major changes. Until next time, this has been Straight Talk.